Hello everyone and welcome to episode 12 of the PvM Hub. If you're unfamiliar with the series, these are a collection of beginner-friendly revolution guides aimed towards teaching people the very basics of Runescape 3 bossing. These guides are in no way optimal, but simply a good starting point for those starting on their bossing journey. If you end up enjoying the video, think about hitting that like button. Regardless, today we're looking at the toxic arachnid herself, Araxxor. Araxxor is by far the most difficult boss we've faced so far in this series. Through her multitude of mechanics and phases, she can be a lot to handle, but hopefully by the end of this video, you'll have a better understanding of how to take her on, and be able to get your first kills. Her biggest draws are the spider leg pieces that she drops, and the hilts that go along with them. The leg piece you would receive depends on which path you choose to go down during the fight, and you'll need one of each of them to make the tradable item, the spider leg, but we'll come back to that a bit later. As always, these guides are broken up into a few different sections, those being the recommendations and requirements, setting up your revolution bar, the important facts and mechanics of the fight, and then a full fight breakdown. For requirements, Araxxor actually has none. If you want to come try your luck as a level 3, you are more than welcome to once you have access to Canifis. But let's go through and talk about my recommendations. You can use any style you want at Araxxor, but in my experience, Mage is the worst, Range is the easiest, and Melee is the best if you know what you're doing. For this guide, I will be showing you how to do ranged Araxxor kills. For a range level, I would recommend at least 90 range with the Royal Crossbow, and if you can afford it, Shadow Glaives will be better. You'll need 75 defense for at least one piece of augmentable range armor, and you'll need 70 prayer as well as have rigor unlocked. You'll want at least 67 summoning for a War Tortoise Beast of Burden, and you'll want invention unlocked with the Venom Blood perk on your augmentable armor. You'll also want to bring with you an item called the Araxxite Pheromone. If this item is in your inventory, Araxxor will always spawn with the attack style that is weakest to yours. So in this case, if we're bringing range, she will use Mage. This item does cost just about 2 mil, but it's super worth it when you're learning Rax. Other recommendations would be at least 92 Herblore so you can make overloads with a +5 boost, and some perks on your weapons like Precise, Equilibrium, or Aftershock. For auras, I'd recommend any of the following: Reckless, Sharpshooter, Penance, or Vampirism. If you have the Majrat aura, you can use that too, but I know not everyone has that. Let's look at the gear I'll be bringing. Keep in mind, what I'm using I consider to be the bare minimum. If you can upgrade any pieces of this, you'll be doing much better. For my armor, I'm wearing almost full Superior Spined armor, but for my leg slot, I'm using Augmented Dinosaur Chaps with the Venom Blood perk. I'm using an unaugmented Royal Crossbow with Ruby but Criminal bolts. These bolts are expensive, but with proper range ability use, you shouldn't use very many of them. I only brought 50 of them for all of my attempts, and I still had plenty left over after my recording. I'm wearing an Amulet of Glory, and until recently I would have suggested an Archer's Ring. However, due to the new bosses, the Rex Matriarchs, using these rings for their new drops, their price has skyrocketed, so instead I'll be using an Asylum Surgeon's Ring, which is a better ring anyways. You can get this ring as a quest reward for completing the Broken Home quest in under 37 minutes. There are plenty of guides on YouTube that will make that an easy feat, so I'd really recommend doing it. I'm also bringing a God Book from the Horror of the Deep quest, but you may want to think about bringing a Sign of Life instead. In my inventory, I'm bringing an Araxxite Pheromone, a normal overload, 2 restore flasks, an augmented Excalibur from completing the elite tasks in the Seer's Village, and then a combination of green blubber jellyfish and beltfish. If you can afford higher level food, I would suggest that as well. It's worth noting that my Beast of Burden is summoned and also full of beltfish and green blubber jellies. Now let's take a look at your revolution bar. If you're unfamiliar with revolution, it's a system in RuneScape that will automatically use your abilities for you from left to right. To take advantage of that, we'll be putting our strongest abilities furthest left so they get used the most often, weaving in our strongest threshold abilities which require 50% adrenaline. If you watch my Gregorovic video, we will be using the exact same revolution bar from that. On top is the PvM Encyclopedia bar, which is considered optimal, and below is my version of the same bar with any of the expensive or difficult unlocks taken out. From left to right, the optimal bar reads Fragmentation Shot, Corruption Shot, Snapshot, Rapid Fire, Needle Strike, Snipe, Death's Swiftness, Binding Shot, Tuska's Wrath, Binding Shot again, and Piercing Shot. For abilities not in the bar, they have Shadow Tendrils, Bombardment, and Dead Shot. For the bar I will be using, it reads Fragmentation Shot, Dazing Shot, Snipe, Snapshot, Rapid Fire, Binding Shot, Ricochet, Bombardment, Dead Shot, and Piercing Shot. For abilities not in the bar, I have Devotion and Debilitate. If you don't know how to correctly cancel your abilities like Snipe and Rapid Fire, I've left a link card in the top right that will take you to a video where I talk more about it. We will want as much DPS here as we can muster, so these types of optimizations are very important. Next, we're going to start taking a look at mechanics. Let's look at a general overview first. Araxxor has 4 phases, the first in the main room, the second down one of the 3 paths, the third at the end of the 3 paths, and the fourth is an island in the acid. At any given time, only 2 of the tunnels will be open, meaning whichever tunnel is closed to you, you will not have to deal with those mechanics during the fight. The tunnels are named as such. The top path is Minion Path, the middle path is the Acid Path, and the bottom is the Darkness Path. Minion Path is by far the most difficult, so if you're planning on learning Rax, I would strongly recommend waiting for a day where the Minion Path is blocked. You can check which path is blocked by looking at Araxxor in the Beast tabs of your adventure log. Araxxor's first 2 phases aren't dictated by her HP, but rather by completing a task of that phase. However, if you leave a phase while Araxxor has more than 10 to 15,000 HP, she will gain that as healing in the next phase. Let's start by looking at phase 1. Araxxor will have 3 different mechanics she will choose from randomly. They are a self-cocoon, a cocoon, and a cleave. When she hunches down and puts a web shield over top of herself, she will reflect any damage you deal to her back to you. Make sure when this happens, you have auto retaliate off and you click away from the boss. When she starts spinning you into a web, you will take constant typeless damage and be unable to attack back. You will want to spam click an area nearby to break yourself out. For her cleave, she will pull you towards you from wherever you are in the room and try and cleave you with her front legs. If it hits, it will deal anywhere up to 6,000 damage and should definitely be avoided. If you anticipate the cleave is coming by either counting auto attacks, which we will talk about in a moment, you can stop yourself by getting pulled in by either having anticipation or freedom already going. However, if you do end up getting pulled in, immediately click away in a straight line. If you can make it 2 squares away before the cleave comes through, you will not be hit. You will see these same 3 mechanics repeated throughout the whole fight, so make sure you're comfortable with them. Going into phase 2, each tunnel will have their own special mechanic to deal with. Starting with Darkness, Araxxor will go up to the ceiling and be unattackable for a whole phase. You will need to jump between spots of light on the ground to avoid taking constant typeless damage. Araxxor will attack you from the ceiling and attempt to spawn eggs on the floor. These eggs will pop up in groups of 2 to 3, and as they do, an explosive attack will be shot at you, tracking you slowly. Make sure you stand on top of or near these eggs while this attack is coming so you can blow them up. If you don't, spider minions will spawn out of them, and the explosive attack will deal much more damage. After a bit of time in the darkness, Araxxor will come down and charge at you. You'll be put into a quick time event cutscene and need to press the correct direction to dodge. It happens quick, so make sure you're ready. I'm going to cycle through a few of the different options and what they will look like. Come back to this if you need help remembering. Once you have successfully dodged once, or incorrectly dodged 3 times, you will move on to phase 3. For Middle Path, there is a large pool of acid in the center. The goal of this section is to raise Araxxor's acid level, seen below her health total, and use that to break the bridge at the end of this path. This section is more of an endurance test than anything else, so sit Araxxor on the acid until she is about at 80%, and then walk to the end of the ramp. When she stands on it, the acid will start to break it down, and once about 50% acid drips off onto it, it will break. During this phase, she can also spawn one-shot spiders. She will spawn these from green blobs she spits on the ground. Do not let these touch you. They will kill you instantly. They have timed life, so instead, get as far away from these spawning blobs as possible, and surge farther away if you have to. Once the bridge is broken, Araxxor will head to phase 3, and you'll jump over the debris at the end of the bridge to do the same. For the top path, Araxxor will occasionally spawn minions. She can spawn a total of 20 minions and will always spawn them 5 at a time. There are technically 5 different types of spiders, but realistically there are only 3. She can spawn an attacking spider, which will have the type of either melee, mage, or range. She can spawn a mirror back spider, which will reflect any of the damage you deal to Araxxor back to you. and a pulsating spider, which will heal Araxxor 5,000 constantly. In priority order, you will always want to focus mirrorback spiders first. These guys are the secret killers that will ruin fights. Second, you focus the pulsating spiders to get them to not heal Araxxor, and the last choice in terms of focus are the DPS spiders. With these stats and gear, I would strongly recommend killing all of the minions, but with higher gear and better DPS, you can choose to ignore them. You can choose to leave this tunnel whenever you want, however you'll still have to deal with the minions in the next phase, and Araxxor will gain her life points and bonus healing. I'd advise heading to phase 3 once Araxxor has around 15,000 HP or less. In phase 3, Araxxor will have all of the same mechanics from phase 2, and then also gain the mechanics from the other open path you did not go down. For example, if you went down the middle path and the bottom path was also open, when you reach phase 3, Araxxor will have both the insta-kill spider mechanic and the darkness mechanic. This is the first phase where the goal is to bring Araxxor's health to 0. There is nothing else special about this phase, just deal with the mechanics as they come and make sure you stay alive. Once Araxxor hits 0 HP, you'll see a quick cutscene and will be transported to the final island. Here you'll see Araxxor get squashed, and now you're fighting Araxxor. This fight will have the exact same mechanics for the first bit, but the most important thing here is that Araxxor's auto attacks will rotate between mage and range. While it's commonly agreed that it switches around every 2 auto attacks, that's not always the case. Make sure you recognize which attack is which. The magic will be bright green with effect trails after it, and the range will be dark green with no extra effects. Devotion is extremely strong for this section. If you're struggling with the amounts of damage you're taking, simply pop Devotion and make sure you're good on your prayer switches. I would strongly recommend using this. Once you bring Araxxor down to 50,000 HP, she will stop using mechanics and only focus on auto attacks. Then, at 25,000 HP, Araxxor will drain 50% of your adrenaline and release a putrid wave. The putrid wave will bounce a minimum of 5 times before trying to track down the player and land on their square. Before the wave lands on you, it's harmless and uninteractable, but as it lands on you, it will deal large amounts of typeless, unblockable damage. Once this wave hits you a single time, move off your square and it will bounce another 5 times. This gives you time to continue DPSing and hopefully end the kill. Continue dodging and prayer switching to keep yourself alive while trying to bring Araxxor's health down to 0. Once you complete that, the kill is over and you have defeated Araxxor for the first time. Before we jump into a full kill, here's a few pro tips you can try to include to make your kills a bit easier. If minion path is up, you can use Devotion when killing the minions to gain up to 20 seconds of extra Devotion uptime. During darkness path, you can bring a shield along and resonance every second auto attack she sends from the ceiling for additional healing. In phase 4, try to build up to 100% adrenaline right before Araxxor hits 25,000 HP, and use an ultimate ability like Death Swiftness or Deadshot before she drains her adrenaline. This will help you end the fight way before the putrid wave lands on you even a single time. You should put your protection prayers on your action bar and have a comfortable keybind for them. I was clicking my prayers in my full kill here, and it almost got me killed. I use Z, X, and C for my curses when I'm not recording guides. And the last thing to know is that if you're going for back-to-back kills at Araxxor, she will gain 20% in rage after every successful kill. This means she will do slightly more damage every time you go back. And rage resets every day at reset. Now, let's finally look at a full kill. Starting from War's Retreat, I teleport to the Canif's Lodestone and head southeast. Go southeast until you find the walls of the Mire Ditch, and then head directly east. You should see a cave with a spider entrance, and you can head down and jump across the bridge. Here you'll interact with the web, and head into the instance. In this kill, I'm going down the middle path, so I make sure to light the middle web on fire so I can start the countdown for this phase. I cast Death Swiftness right away to try and amplify my damage. Here, she uses a cocoon on me, and I spam click nearby to get myself out as fast as possible. As an aside, this kill will take a long time, so I will be speeding up some parts of it after we've seen the mechanics. Here, she casts a web down on herself that will reflect damage and heals her gradually, so I click away. I use Anticipate to keep my adrenaline, and I re-attack her once the web goes away. After 4 auto attacks, she will use her next ability, which is another cocoon on me, so I spam click to try and get out of it. Here you can see that the web has burned down about 90%, and I've only done about 30% of her health and damage so far. This means that as the web goes down, I will not take her to the next phase immediately, and instead try and reduce her health pool a little bit lower. She webs again, and I wait it out. Here you can see that I start channeling a snipe ability right before she breaks out to get some extra damage in. Here, I'll speed it up ×2, so we don't have to wait through the whole rest of this phase. After dodging that cleave, her health seems to be low enough for me to take her on to the next place, so I activate my Enhanced Excalibur and move down to the center of the acid tunnel. I move just to the edge of the acid and call down my Death Swiftness, so that I know she's standing in the middle of the acid and will be gaining charges. She casts an insta-kill spider right behind me, unfortunately, so I do have to leave my Death Swiftness, but I try to keep her in the acid as best as I can. You can see that her acid is still ticking up right below her health bar there, so you know that she's in the correct position. After the insta-kill spider times out, I surge back to my Death Swiftness, and I use any threshold abilities I have. For her egg-laying ability, I walk over so the explosive hits me and all the eggs, and it deals almost no damage. She tries to cleave me here, so I walk back, but then I make sure to walk back into her range so she stays in the acid pool, as she doesn't quite have enough acid to complete the phase. I've decided she has enough acid, so I walk her up the ramp. Unfortunately, she spawns some eggs right in the middle, and it makes things a little bit tricky, but I manage to save it, blow up the eggs, and keep her on the bridge. From here, it's just a matter of waiting until the acid drips off enough to break the bridge, so I'll speed it up ×2. Here we go. As we move on to phase 3, this will be the most difficult phase of this whole fight for us, because she will start to spawn minions and they will deal a lot of damage to our lower tier gear. Here I cast Death Swiftness right away, in hopes to get as much DPS in as I can before she spawns her first wave of spiders. Here she spawns her first wave of spiders, so I immediately stop attacking for fear of a mirrorback spider, and I start tagging spiders as I go. I find a mirrorback spider on the flank, so I tag it and kill it right away. I unfortunately get cocooned in the middle here, and I take a lot of unnecessary damage as all the DPS spiders have stacked up on top of me. Once I break out, I take a step away and use bombardment on them, killing all of them except for one. She then spawns another wave of spiders, and I have to go through and make sure that there is not another mirrorback spider, and then I will clear all the DPS minions. I position myself on top of the eggs, and thankfully the attack blows all of the minions up as well. For the third layer of spiders, I do the same thing, and here I'll speed up the rest of this phase ×2. The cleave does manage to deal some damage to the minions as well, and I'm able to take out the rest of them fairly easily. You can see unfortunately I've gone through a lot of my food already, and if I had used my Excalibur earlier, I should have been able to use it again here. Unfortunately I used it a bit late, but I will have it available for the fourth phase. Here she spawns an insta-kill spider behind me, and I move off to the other side to stay safe. Once she spawned all of her spiders, the rest of this phase is pretty cut and dry, so I'll leave you guys to just watch. As I drop her to 0, the cutscene plays and sends me across to the fourth and final platform. Here I'll be facing Araxxor, and I need to be ready for my prayer switches. I use Anticipate to make sure my adrenaline doesn't run out, I use my Augmented Excalibur for the 4th phase to give me a passive heal, and I eat back up a little bit. I use my Death Swiftness ability right away, and I switch my prayer to range as that's the first 2 auto attacks she does, and then back to mage. I won't be narrating that for the rest of this fight, but just notice the prayer switches along the way. Araxxor uses a cocoon on me, and I eat up while breaking out to keep my HP as high as possible. I continue to prayer flick, and thanks to some good crits, I managed to get a lot of DPS done that rotation. I use Devotion just as she webs, which is unfortunate, but it's not the end of the world. I would have liked to save it for later, but it won't end this kill. I continue my prayer flicks, and I use Debilitate when I need to lower some damage. I just passed the 50k threshold, so I make sure I continue my DPS and keep my health total high. I'm watching Araxxor's health for when it gets around 25,000 to make sure I use my adrenaline before that so it doesn't just get sapped away from me. Here at 25,000 the Putrid Wave spawns and it drains my adrenaline. I don't have very much food left, so I'm a little nervous here, but I keep my composure, and I step away from the acid once it hits me a single time. Here you will see one of my biggest mistakes of the fight. I double click my Protect from Mage prayer, which turns it off. At the same time, the Putrid Wave unfortunately lands directly on me, meaning it doesn't bounce the full 5 times. This stacks the damage on top and knocks my HP down to 0, forcing me to Sign of Life. Thankfully, since I had it, I was able to finish the kill. And with that, we have taken down one of the best late game bosses and have finally left the realm of beginner level PvM. I hope you found this guide helpful, and if you stuck all the way through to the end, please consider giving it a like or subscribing. I've recently started streaming on Mondays, so make sure you follow me there as well. This coming stream will be the release of the Rex Matriarchs, so if you're interested in my approach to a new boss, come by the stream and check it out. Link in the description. But with that, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Zingy out.